So we'll call our select board meeting together, August 27th, 6 o'clock. The 6 o'clock agenda item is private road and driveway standards. We're not something we work with, so fire and rescue does, and you guys do, so I don't know who wants to kick this off.
I can
You want to? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, Peter. If you normally do, you can. Sure, you can.
I mean, I don't know if we should.
Are you warned as a meeting?
Yeah. Yes.
It's warned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll call the planning commission meeting to order for today, Monday, 8/27.
And you get to do minutes as well.
Yeah.
You can use ours.
So thanks, Dick and Rob, for coming from the fire station. Thank you, the planning commission, for coming. I think for several years it's been recognized that the private road and driveway standards needed to be updated. The first time they were created was in 1997, and that's the last time they were updated. They were developed by Fire and Rescue as a recommendation, and the Planning Commission adopted them and has used them for reviewing subdivisions ever since then. When applicants come in and say, what do we need to do for roads or driveways, we say, here you go, here it is. And that's what they're reviewed against. With newer techniques for road construction and different apparatus and vehicles, it's been recognized that the 97 standards need to be updated. And Darryl from the Planning and Zoning Office, I think, has been working with Rob kind of on a case-by-case basis to review applications. But it's really, we really need standards that we can, everyone is aware of and agrees to, and we can use. I've heard that there's some concerns about some of the new potential standards as far as making roads or the dead end of a road larger and wider, as far as the cost of development and additional impervious areas and potential surface water runoff and those kinds of things. So maybe there's a way to, make the standards, update them, and perhaps there's some compromise as far as the dimensions go, and that's, maybe this is the start of that discussion. I don't think we're gonna, have it all wrapped up tonight, but it's the start.
Can I ask a question, just policy here? So we have policies, we have ordinances. This is a standard. I don't think I remember working on standards. Is this another category?
It's referenced in our land use in decisions, in our land use regulations, it's referenced. So the land use regulations refer to the road standards.
So we as a body here can approve these as we go through the process here?
Well, the last time they were approved, it was actually by the Planning Commission. Okay. So there's, I think at least the Planning Commission needs to sign off on it, and then if the Select Board also wants to sign off on it, that would be good as well.
Is this your time? Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I think a couple of things have come up, and one is that, as Dean noted, that they're referenced in the land use regs, so I think we're legally we're bound to that. So I think we've been really conflicted, because I think we're getting good information and updates from the fire department, but for an applicant, if you look at what the regs, the land use regs say, and the plan says, it referenced the 97 standard. So I think what we need to do is collectively we need to update them and then get them in and vote on them so that they're legally bound to those regs. Because right now, I feel that we have to we're bound to the 97 regs. So I think that's one thing. I think there's, as Dean also mentioned, there's been some concern about the size of the turnaround, I think, based on the new trucks. And some folks who have driveways that exceed 500 or 800 feet, now we're wondering, well, what does that mean for those folks that have driveways that exceed that with the new trucks?
So, back to my first question though, so you want our concurrence with you on this? Because it does say Planning Commission, September 2nd, 1997. I mean, you want our concurrence, or as we?
I don't know as we necessarily need your concurrence. I think there wasn't, we felt it would be good to have a joint discussion about it so that we better understand that we understand as a town in terms of, going forward. I'm sure there'll be updates, there'll be new trucks down the road in terms of how we want to make sure that when we do that, then we make the adjustments, the updates where need be, and get them into the land use regs as quickly as we can, so that we're referencing those new requirements.
There are many, you asked what this means for people there. There are many homes in this community that do not even meet the 97 standards. It doesn't stop us from going in there. It slows us down. We could bury a fire truck if the driveway's not solid enough. There are several with large homes and developments on them that predate that, where the roads are barely as wide as a fire truck. So if you have an incident down there, and once one truck's in there, you're done. But we still go in there and do the best we can, but it'd be nice to work with you to update that, so at least going forward, the new homes, which, as we have all noticed in this community, they never get any smaller, they keep getting bigger.
Is this something that the zoning administrator looks at?
That at least in the future, the newer homes will make access easier and the standards will be clearer. So,
The zoning administrator look at it in terms of a legal lot. Because if you have a legal lot, then it's up to the zoning board, right? Or does a planning commission review?
If he's got a legal lot and he can get a permit to build a house. I mean, you have to come to the
Zoning.
the select board for a road cut, but he's not going to come to the zoning at all to build a house. He just goes, the zoning administrator just issues him a permit for a house.
Right.
So he would have to, I'm assuming that this would have to be something that the zoning administrator
administrator
may want to look at also.
I agree that they would be, for terms of not subdivisions, that they should, because my driveway, for example, I was one permit on a house, and I don't have the turnout halfway up the driveway, but.
I don't think in the past it has been. I think the planning, the planning commission and the town planner will look at it for a subdivision, but someone comes in for a zoning permit, the zone administrator looks at where the building is located, that it meets the setbacks, and if there are any conditions from the planning commission or the zoning board that were created when it was reviewed, they look at that, but they don't look at necessarily the driveway.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if this may want to be some kind of a town policy or ordinance or something instead of just a recommendation sort of thing.
I think that's where we would get involved with, the planning commission's gonna use it for subdivisions and for regular, just permit actions. That's, the zoning board or the zoning administrator is gonna have to say, you have to follow these rules, and when I come out to give you your certificate of occupancy, you need to have this done on your driveway. Has to be.
Our role typically is that, as Dean mentioned, our priority is looking at where a driveway is going to be, where it is relative to the road it comes off on, where it is relative to the building lot, and then we reference the regs, the 97 recommendations, and say this is what you need depending on the length of the drive. Historically, there have been a number of times, as Rob has mentioned, where the fire department has worked with the planning commission, where we've gone out, or you guys have taken the truck out to existing roads to see if you can deal with it, or whether they need to be widened or not. But I think that ultimately we really want to have something that everybody feels confident they can live with. And again, the planning commission just says, these are the standards that you have to meet.
These were put forth by Chief Davis back in '97, but I know when I first came on board in '14, he and I went out to over on Toad Road area, and we actually went out and measured the grade of a driveway to see if they could, so that's a concern, the percentage of the grade and the width and all that. So, but anybody currently would be grandfathered, but we're just looking at stuff further ahead. So as the chief said, the houses aren't getting smaller in Charlotte, they're getting bigger. But it should apply to single-family homes too, not just developments or subdivisions.
So, this is the 97 document that we have in front of us. Do you, since you have the primary interest, and as the previous document, planning supported it, so do you have an input to us going forward, or to the?
Changes we'd like to discuss with the.
To go through this then?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, if you want, I mean, we can meet separately or, do it here.
Well, we have the time now, we can set it aside.
Right, it was set aside, so. The biggest driver.
Yeah, for starting.
Since you folks are the ones that would be writing the warning to be voted on, I think you need to be as up to date as we are.
I appreciate this meeting myself. I think it's great, and it is going forward.
Well, when you say warnings, I mean, I agree with Karen. It's good to talk about it, but this doesn't necessarily have to go before the public, does it?
That's what has to be voted on by the county, isn't it?
Land use regulations, yes, but our ordinances we do, our policies we do. We have hearings and we advertise, but we ultimately approve them at this level here.
I think that's a good question, because they're called recommended standards for developments and homes. It's not really,
So if it's under a land use regulation concept,
they're referenced.
then it goes
Yeah,
to the public.
so that's why I'm thinking, it's referenced in the land use regs, so that begs the question as, does it need to be voted on?
I thought it did.
Well, if it's an ordinance, the ordinance is handled at the select board level
Right,
with hearings and a select board vote and not a public vote.
and policies.
So we should, not only go through this and determine what we want to make this, a policy or a
But the
regulation.
The point they're making is, this is a subset of land use regulations.
Right, but it's just gonna reference a policy or an ordinance.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's a separate document.
Original was voted on at any point.
You can tell by looking at it, it wasn't.
Yeah,
The planning commission hereby approves it, it says.
and it's been modified slightly since then, but
So,
I think we should go through and determine what we want, and then following that, we'll have the discussion. Do we want to make this a regulation to be voted on or an ordinance to be applied?
okay. So, yeah.
So the driving force behind this was, Daryl and I have been working on it. He'd be coming over to the station. Somebody has some questions about what they need to do for roads and turnarounds and stuff like that. Where it really came to light was the Pizzagalli development up off of Mutton Hill. And so with that being said, I went out and did some measurements with the fire trucks as far as what the turning radiuses are. And they're bigger. Trucks they're getting larger, they're getting heavier, and it makes some changes. One of the biggest changes, and I'm not an engineer and I don't claim to be, but we need to have a road now to be able to support 50,000 pounds instead of the old standard of 29,900 pounds. Our new fire truck that just came in is 48,000, 49,000.
says 29, you said it should be what?
Should be 50,000 pounds, 25-ton truck.
Is the new truck have a tank on it?
Yes.
yes,
Is that with the loaded tank?
yes,
That's everything.
That's
Yes,
a loaded
Fully
truck.
loaded?
Both
Yes.
bumpers, including the 2004, come in right at about 50,000 pounds.
Which isn't, in retrospect,
Which
really
is
isn't
lighter
that
than
heavy.
a lot
If you compare fuel trucks, milk trucks, they're gonna be way around the same, around the same type of, weights. So it's not just for us, it's also for them to be able to get up there safely and things like that, so. But that was one of the biggest driving points was, we need to have something beefier to hold our trucks. And I don't know if it's 18 inches of gravel or 4-inch crusher stone, I don't know. We'd have to have an engineer look at that. I've got that in here as the old standard, but I don't know. So,
I would like an engineer to look at it, but I'm almost saying the old standard with the Mylar under it does make it, but we need to have it checked.
Depends on the soil.
Yeah, if you're on a swamp, nothing's gonna make
You're in
it.
clay
So
mush, you need foot and a half, or it needs to be raised above the water table.
Yeah.
Foot of compactor, my driveway has 18 inches of big base on top of the road fabric before it starts getting topped, just because it goes through some soft areas.
Yeah.
But
And these standards, you know, in 97 were based on the 1980 Mac that we had there. That was
That's
the
a
engine.
144-inch wheelbase.
Right.
Compared to all the new trucks over there, we held them all at 195 to keep them as short as possible.
So the old standard of 40-foot turnaround used to work for the old Mac. It doesn't anymore. And the other thing is, as we said, houses are getting bigger, and we're calling in mutual aid more. And one of our mutual aid companies or departments nearby has a ladder truck. So we need to have something to be able to get that turned around in the event that we do use that. And there's a good chance and possibility we're going to use their truck as well. So one of the things that I did was I went out with Shelburne Fire Department and their ladder truck in our engine, not our current engine, but the one that's in service right now, not the new one. And I found that 80 foot was the minimum that we could do for a turnaround circle.
From a 40-foot radius to an 80-foot radius.
Yeah. Not radius, diameter.
Then it's the same, it says 40-foot diameter radius.
This says, that says 40-foot radius, right. It's an 80-foot diameter, all the way
It's the
around.
same. Radius.
40 radius, yes.
Radius is half a
Yes,
circle.
I'm picking up the hammerhead, sorry, yes.
So that one's okay.
So, well,
The one thing, these trucks are bigger, but with the technology, they turn really well.
So that one is okay.
I thought the old standard said 20-foot radius.
No, I think it's
20 and 40,
The
I
one
thought.
that says 40-foot radius or 80 foot
80-foot turn cycle.
80,
diameter turn circle.
Okay.
But it seemed like the few folks that we've been talking with this, the 80-foot circle is a hard thing to swallow. Putting that at the end of their driveway or by their house. So as a substitution, we looked at what it would take to turn trucks around, and we also allow a hammerhead down there. And that should be 1,600 square feet, 40 by 40. And that'll allow us to get 1 or 2 trucks in there to turn around to stage and stuff like that. And it seems like that was more appealing to the folks that I've been talking with, putting a hammerhead versus the cul-de-sac.
So you're saying a square that's 40 by 40?
Yeah.
Rather than
Single
the,
home or a single home or a development?
It should be either. We got to be able to get the trucks in and out.
Well, if it's a really short driveway. You know, what is it?
And we have that in here, we have that in here as far as,
Yeah.
so what we're looking at is if it's more than 500 feet long,
That's still a long driveway.
that's a long driveway. And that's a long ways
I
to,
can tell you that when the chief tells the old man to drag this heavy thing up the hill because the truck doesn't fit in the driveway, by the time I get there, I sit down. I can't do anything, it's too hard.
We carry, because of the size of the buildings in town, and that we can with the foam system, we carry 300-foot pre-connected lines. If I don't have a minimum of 50 foot for each floor and another 50 foot for each story in a house, when I get to the door, I don't have enough hose at the door. So if we can't get within 100 feet of this building, we're going to be stopping, trying to stretch lines, add more lines. And again, nowadays everything burns just so damn fast compared to what it used to. And that's the other thing with these roads. If the road's substandard and we're coming in, it takes us longer to get in. If I'm navigating slalom course in between trees because it's a 9-foot road and there's a tree here and a tree there, it all slows us down.
so the other thing we got to think about is turnarounds. It's for the fire trucks, but it's also for the ambulance. Because a lot of times the ambulance will go down in, and they may not be able to turn it around down there. And now if they get a critical patient, they got to back out that 500-foot driveway. So we got to think about that as well. So, and that's going to directly involve patient care if we don't have something big enough down there to turn around. So that's another thing we got to be thinking about.
so the same turnaround standards, but you're just saying it's not only fire vehicles, but it's also the rescue or the ambulance.
Yes.
And that's only for driveways 500 feet or longer, is that correct? That's what the old.
I'd like to see it go shorter, but it's going to be a money issue, you know. But
I
you got to think
personally
about
would like
those
to see
safety.
it anything more than 150 foot away from a town right away on the road, but again, because that gives me parking on the road, it gives me 150-foot line to get to the house, and 150 to get into it. But, and then if we have to carry someone out 150, 200 feet, when you've got 2 people on the ambulance, and then it's getting much more than that, could be extremely difficult.
Maybe we can add to Dean's list of stuff to do is to call a couple of insurance companies and see how they view access. And if they defer to local fire department rules and/or have their own rules. I mean, I know.
A few times I've suggested to owners that if their insurance company knew we couldn't make it down their driveway, they did some modifications, so.
When you were up on Murphy Road, how did you get out of there? How'd you turn around? Everything's wide enough there, or?
It was a large enough driveway that carefully, and after about a 6-point turnaround, I made it back up with the engine.
Because there was 3 engines in the fire truck.
Well,
rescue.
right, but there's only one vehicle up into the driveway of the house.
Into the driveway.
The house sat back maybe 150 feet off the main road. I brought the engine up and I staged everything outside.
And where did the other truck
They staged on
stay?
Sheehan Drive, on Murphy Road.
Away from the...
Okay.
I need visuals.
Yeah, they were outside on the main road. They didn't come up into
And
the
how
driveway.
did they would have turned around in a driveway and...
I think they just turned around at the driveway.
Yeah.
They backed up, did a 3-point turn, and came back out around.
Okay, very good.
So I was able to turn around up in the driveway and drive back out. So, where the length of the driveways come into play is, and this again is all subject for change, but what we've got here is all access roads. When an access road is a road that serves 6 or more houses or driveways.
Is that in here?
That's the very first part of it. Right? So what we did, and the old standard broke it down as far as access roads and driveways. Access roads serve 6 or more houses or driveways, and those should be, and again, this didn't change, 18 feet wide, minimum of, with a 2-foot wide shoulder. And that's where the gravel requirement comes in to support 50,000 pounds.
So that width is the same as the current standard?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing you've changed in that access road thing is the 50,000 pounds so far.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Which may change the standards that they need to put underneath the
Underneath.
ground.
Right, it may change the depth of gravel, the type of gravel, I don't know, that has to be engineered by an engineer.
Depending on your soil.
I do know that we talked to the Pisers about this, and their engineer, if I remember correctly, he said that what we had in there was enough, but I don't know if that's a true statement or not, so. It should be engineered out to see if that's what it should be. But the biggest issue is the length of the driveway, and with the length of the driveway, we've got to have bump outs, vehicle bump outs. And those have changed. It was, I think, what'd you say on their lane? 12
by 35.
35, 12 by 35. Because of the bigger apparatus, those should be increased to 15 by 50.
Where are you now?
It's the end of the first
End of the first access roads.
Oh, it says 35 by 12, okay.
15 by 50?
If the road's longer than 500
Oh,
feet,
15 by 50?
the road should have bump outs.
How long is mine?
And a bump out is so that we can pass apparatus back and forth. Where that's going to be used is in a tanker shuttle. If we've got multiple tankers going to a structure fire and they're going to be, shuttling water up to the engine that's at the house, you've got to have a place for those trucks to pull over. You can't have one wait at the end of the driveway, one come all the way out, and then another one. And it also gives us room to turn around as well if we need to.
So that applies to whether it's an access road or a driveway.
That is an access road or a driveway, over 500 feet long.
So that's changing from 800 feet to 500 feet?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the dimension again, 15 feet by?
15 by 50 is going to be sufficient to be able to put in one vehicle. Our vehicles are about 32 and a half feet long to be able to turn in off that road and get out of the way so another vehicle could pass.
So that's access road or driveway?
Yes.
Longer than 800 feet will have
Yep.
15 by 50, okay?
Yep. And that's going to be, if it's over 500 feet, it's going to be at or near halfway.
Is that a passing zone or is that a turnout?
It's a passing.
It's a passing zone.
Because there's a difference if you had it just wider for a section where the truck could pull over, another truck could pass it versus teeing into a,
Right, that's what I'm saying, just, it's wide.
so you're widening the road from 18 feet to, let me help, 33 feet?
Yes,
Do the math right?
yes, so the 15 goes from the edge of the shoulder further out.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for 50 feet long?
Yes,
Okay, so it's like like a railroad siding.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that allows us to pull in, let the vehicle pass, and then be able to pull back out without having to back up and shifting it around.
But I think the current standard calls it a turnout, but I think you're right, Charlie, it's really a bump out, not a turnout.
Right, that's why I.
You see, most
listed bump
engineers
out.
draw it as like a T section to the roadway, which is not what you're at.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
That's not really what you're looking for.
So what's a better word? Turnout's not the right word?
I use bump out, is what I used.
Pull off, bump out.
Yeah.
Passing lane or something.
Passing.
I think maybe that should be. As located by the fire department and not necessarily halfway. Just because if your driveway makes some turns, I use mine for an example. I mean, you can't see, the first part you can see, but once you make a turn, you wouldn't want it halfway, you want it done halfway in the part where you can't see. So,
Where that's hard is because when they come to the station, they haven't built their driveway yet, and we've got to look at it on paper. So without being out there to see what they're doing, it's hard to say, we want it here and here and here.
well, you can always do a field walk, that's what we have to do.
You're gonna want it on a relatively flat area too, I would think.
Yeah.
So that once you
If we
stop, you can
could,
start
yeah,
back up.
Yeah. And like the Pisers, they weren't halfway, but they had a barn that was going in, that they're gonna just bump that into a wider driveway for us, so. And we're willing to work with people on issues like that. And then if the driveway keeps going, it's every 600 feet after that. So, and a good example is the 3702 Mount Philo Road, Harmeling residents. They've got a driveway with a bunch of switchbacks going up Mount Philo, that there's probably 4 or 5 bump outs on that road that are done very well just for that. So, and that's actually where I sent the Pisers to go look at it. Go take a look.
Way up on the hill, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that, it's in the old standard, but a thing that we gotta be focusing on a little bit as well, is we need to have a 12-foot box available, free of trees and obstructions and stuff like that. That includes wires and everything, in order to get the apparatus through. With the snow load on the trees and stuff like that, 10-foot doesn't give it to us anymore.
It was 12 feet.
Yeah, it's only 12.
See, I saw somewhere it said 14, but, so.
That's on the wider.
But I'm just saying, yeah, it's still 12 feet, but we gotta be a little more focused on that, impressing upon that.
I think we always just push 14 through because it ended up 12 before we.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing is over time,
Right.
trees grow and
Right.
branches lower.
I mean, I'll give you a prime example of trees and other obstructions, and, on the corners, we had a chimney fire over on Dorset Street one night, and engine 1 could not get to the house. We had to back out engine 1 and bring engine 4, which is our shorter engine, because of the trees that were situated on the driveway. We could not make the corner and get our bigger engine up to the house. Had that been an actual structure fire, we would have had 250 gallons of water to fight the fire with. And we took a walk with him that evening and said, you need to cut this tree, you need to cut this tree, you need to cut this tree. Did it get done? I don't know, I didn't go back, but he was pretty adamant he was gonna get it done for us. But those are the issues we run across. And we're gonna be the bad guys, we can't get the fire trucks up there. But it's not us, it's the development of the roads.
Should we talking making driveways the same 18 feet wide or just 14 feet wide?
No, driveways 1 to 5 or 14 foot wide with a 2-foot shoulder.
So I think currently they don't have to have a shoulder, so that would be the shoulder. I mean, it's currently 14 feet wide.
Right. The
Yeah.
shoulder will give us room for snow plow, banks and stuff like that.
Same 500 feet long.
Yeah.
So the second paragraph under driveways, we want to change minimum 14 feet wide, minimum 8 gravel, just say support 50,000 pounds.
Weight of a 50,000 pound fire truck, yep.
And then driveways that are less than 500 feet long will have 14 feet usable, minimum gravel with 2-foot shoulder.
That's 2 feet on each side.
Yes.
Shoulders.
It's a shoulder.
Maximum grade not be less than, more than 8%.
Yeah, the grades is another big one we need to talk about too.
Yeah.
Driveway,
Williams Hill. What's that grade?
Williams Hill, I believe
The
that was.
particular, the one that goes to the west.
The Elfin Hill section.
Well,
Up
actually,
by the
both of
school.
them.
Yeah.
Up by the school?
What are
I believe
those?
they're 13
I think
degrees.
it's 13%.
And 13 maximum. Steeper than that in town, you got White Birch, you've got James Farm. James Farm, they took what we said for a maximum and then they kind of averaged it, so that's why we changed to maximum from average. I can tell you it's no fun sliding down any of those backwards, and we have on Williams Hill more than once, especially in the tree lines like that where nothing melts, and then when it does, it's glare ice. And when you start sliding a $500,000, 50,000 pound fire truck backwards because of glare ice, it's not a fun ride.
So what's happened, what I'm aware of that's happened in the past is the planning commission has said 8%, and then sometimes they've talked to fire and rescue, they say, well, if they sprinkler the houses up at the,
We've got that in there. That,
And there have been times too where,
you know, I think the fire department they're trying to work with the landowner. And I think that historically, the planning commission, you know, we'd rather, we want people to be safe, so we're thinking it's 8%, that's it. There have been situations where you guys have gone out, this is going back a ways, and then been okay. Williams Hill is a good example, that's probably 10 years old. So I mean, I think
What we're looking
I think
at.
one of the things that's come up is, especially with the change in the road standards, is, you know, we're trying to make it so that it's pretty straightforward for an applicant when they come in. So they're not, so we don't say, well, you gotta go here for this, you gotta go to the fire department for this, instead of just saying, here's the requirement, you have to, you know, you gotta follow.
What we're looking at with the grade is your 8%. Anything above that would need to be sprinkled, monitored alarm systems, up to 12%. I don't feel good going above 12%, which is just a little less than Williams Hill, because it's not so much the fire truck trying to get to a sprinkled property, it's the ambulance trying to get to a cardiac arrest or anyone to get in there.
I forgot what the state limit is on the grade. Does anybody know? No?
And so who checks for the sprinkler system that all of your standards get met at the CO, maybe?
Well,
Certificate
they
of-
brought plans over to the fire station, and we've got one sitting there right now, actually, that we just looked at and approved. They bring in the plan saying, this is what we want for hyper sprinklers, this is where they're gonna be. And I've been out
We're
to,
gonna be on a higher grade? or-
yeah, well, I don't know the layout of this building, I just know it's gonna be sprinklered. I've gone out and actually tested them, or be there when the sprinkler company that does manufacturing and the install, they actually test them.
They usually do a
follow
bucket
them.
test at
They
the
usually
end.
do a test, and I'm there to watch that. And I'm making sure that the fire pump is working, they've got enough supply of water on site, and that the alarm system is working as well.
do we have a 5-year test requirement for those?
There is, I believe.
It's an annual inspection.
Inspection.
I know on commercial, I don't know what it is on residential. On commercial, it's an annual inspection is required.
Because that's covered by the state.
Yes.
So houses aren't
I don't
necessarily
know
have to do
houses
a
for residential.
pump test I can tell you what happens when a fire sprinkler pump fails. You lose lots of buildings.
And, you know, the other thing we gotta, you know, the sprinklers are not, the ones that we're asking to be put in is called a 13D system. And that, it is not designed for, as NFPA puts it, it's not for protection of property, it's for life safety. So it will keep the fire in check for a few minutes so that the occupants can escape unharmed. And then it's gonna run out of water. Now, the differences are you've got a 13D system, which is through NFPA, which I just talked about. That's only gonna flow enough water for 10 minutes. A 13R system, which is designed for multiple occupancies, is gonna flow water for 30 minutes.
You'll see us want the difference where they come up like the co-housing where there is multiple units stacked on top of each other.
That's a 13R.
That would be an R that we'd like to see. But
But
on a home,
A sprinkler system for a residential for a 13D consists of sprinkler heads, a small fire pump in the basement or wherever it's going to be, and a small storage system, 200 to 400 gallons of water, depending on the size of the occupancy.
And that would be required if it's over the 8% grade.
Over the 8%, or if it's larger than 3,200 square feet, not dependent on the grade.
Larger.
We're looking at that as well.
Looking at the larger homes in town, that there's homes that I've watched being built this last year that are 8,000 plus, and there's no way we can handle it. We're gonna request that anything above what the average size home in town is, and we took a shot at 3,200, is a pretty big house.
So that if it was over, say 3,200, what you're saying is it'd be required 13 sprinkled. Okay.
You would want the planning commission to tell them that, going over
It would be
any
part
of
the
the
process.
details.
Not every house that comes in, do we see?
We don't know.
Planning or zoning?
Or zoning, okay,
Right.
I see.
But if it says that maybe there's the zoning administrator looking at a house that's being built.
And that, he's the only one that looks at it.
Yeah.
So there may be a case where the zoning administrator would have to know that these guidelines have to be.
So this is a totally new requirement, right?
That part would be a new request.
8% grade, I just said, and then
The 8%.
greater than 32.
The 8% grade has been in there for a while, and I know we have had project sprinkler above, like you said, working with them, anything above that, so landowners could actually use their land. But at that point, most of those were Act 250, where they had to have their signatures, so they weren't arguing this one. The signature of the fire chief saying that he can protect property on the Act 250 permit. So,
I noticed on driveways, there's 18 feet wide for all entrance intersections. So that's something,
50 feet or something?
well, that's something we should put on our curb cut, minimum length of the culvert, because we're approving culverts that don't meet that.
Well, the culverts, no, they're always 30 feet long, usually, the culverts.
Okay. Does that say that on that form? Minimum 30 feet long?
I mean, it's what your
We
nose
should
recommends.
yeah, we should put on that form that it's minimum 30 feet long with an 18-foot driveway. Minimum 18-foot driveway.
With-
Because, yeah, there's some newer ones that are shorter than that, I'm sure. That's the other part where the 50,000 pound may come into play, because when you have shallow coverage over a pipe, now the pipe has to,
Right.
you can get heavier rated pipe, but that's just a dollar thing.
When you said 3,200 square feet, is that all structures if it's commercial as well? I mean, not that we got that many commercial structures, but
Commercial is gonna have to be sprinkled no matter.
anyway.
Any commercial, any multifamily housing, I would push to be sprinkled. We're rolling in with 3 to 5 guys, waiting for mutual aid that's bringing 3 to 5 guys. You take a city department like New York City, who has a water supply, they send 60 guys to a house fire. We're doing this with 10 or 15 overall. When you have multifamilies together and multiple units where you're worried about the occupants next to it, the fire and occupancies on both sides, we're stretched pretty thin. So we would push, that's like we did with co-housing, all the multifamily needed to be sprinkled.
Would that apply to barns, even though they're not under our auspices? But I'm just wondering about that, because barns are really large.
Agricultural, I doubt it.
Yeah.
If it becomes a commercial, sort of like some of these barns in town that have been pushed for commercial occupancies.
It wouldn't apply to barns because there's no life hazard for one. But more importantly, there's no heat in it, it's gonna be an outside system, and you're
Well,
gonna talk.
I'm just thinking of this now, because, you know, of the Violet Ridge Farm.
Yeah, that was
It's
one
a
that.
barn, but it's a lot more than a barn.
It's a
So what
commercial
about-
property, but that one fell below the state rules because both us and the state fire marshal's office recommended that it be sprinklered, and it was not, because it fell somewhere into a pocket where it called itself agricultural.
Yeah.
And it's also it has lower occupancy than what sprinklers require.
Yeah.
Is there distance between buildings?
There is, somewhere in the plans, I know we used before, this buildings in it. I believe it was.
On the between barn and house. So a little 50 feet of a house.
Well, again, barns are,
I think it was 50 feet, but I
Under
think they worry about whether the fall zone would actually affect it.
That's it too, yeah. But I can tell you this much, when a house or a barn is burning, 50 feet's way too damn close.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, it's
I
close.
agree.
There's a lot of heat, but not that.
I know.
So if you got a residential
It
application,
was
then
kind of
you
warm next to your house, wasn't it?
Burn the paint on the side of the house, which was 100 feet away.
And we were on that pretty quick. We were fighting, it was a hay barn, there was no winning, but we had water and foam and everything on that before it broke outside, and we were able to burn the center section out, keep the milk house and the other barn that was attached. So that one got nowhere near as hot as, I know when the barn burnt at Shelburne Farm, Shelburne Fire Department lost windshields, headlights, everything that was melted. I drove by the barn moving, and it melted a plastic emblem on the side of our engine. So that's how hot they can get in a heartbeat. So the distance is an important thing to look at.
Yeah, but don't forget, that barn was loaded with dry wood.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Oh, yeah.
But
But you also
any
remember,
old
You
barn's
had
gonna
a
burn.
fuel supply there that was
You
above and
did.
beyond a normal
but you also
barn.
remember the fire trucks were about 150, 200 feet away.
Yeah,
So that's a lot of heat being transferred.
yeah. I drove by it about 150 feet away, and seconds it melted the emblem. Yes, and that one was an exemplary fuel load.
is there a distance, or should there be, or are we allowed to make a distance?
I don't think with ag structures we can.
no, yeah, nothing to that extent.
Not ag, but
An accessory building that's not ag, yeah.
I think I look at the state fire regs more to see what they recommend before I
They
try
usually
to.
deal with the property line setback at the state level.
what is the Shalott setback?
The standard is 50, but in some developments where they're clustering the houses, it can be less.
Okay, I know we did talk about the clustering, because I know at co-housing, we allowed them almost, I think, 15 feet if the buildings were non-combustible on the outside,
I think that's right.
which included non-combustible siding. They had to change their design for soffit details so fire wouldn't roll up into the buildings. I'm pretty sure it was 15 feet we
Yeah.
went there. So we're willing to work with people, but
Then Adobe House is pretty close.
yeah, yeah. But again,
Well, I think some people probably aren't even aware of the issue. You know, I'm just gonna build a barn here so I don't have to walk so far. But, so that would be, we'd have to read the state ag rules to see if there's any,
So,
Excuse me.
the other thing that we'd like to push is for any building that is sprinklered, that they also have a monitored alarm system in the building.
For any house that has sprinklers.
Yes. Yeah. And the reason for that is if they, and the other, to go along with that, would be what we call a Knox home box, which is a key that we have a bonded key, a box that we have a bonded key to that only we have it. It is locked in a secured box on the apparatus, and only people can get into it with a PIN code. They put their house key outside their door in this box, and they can get into their house without forcing entry. And with the prices of doors nowadays, the box is $175, I think. One forcible entry is going to pay for that, and you get it right through me at the fire department. But the reason for the alarm system is if they're not home and something happens, it could be a bug going through the smoke detector. It could be water flowing. We don't know. That we could get in without having to call them. We would be notified earlier in advance, and we can go and stop the flow of the water, preventing water damage. It will eventually run out because they're only going to have 200 to 600 gallons of water, but we may be able to get there sooner and shut that water flow down. So,
I think that's been kind of the standard that's been requested.
Yes,
Do you call
yes,
it
it is.
direct station monitor, or direct monitor? Or
yeah, it's a central alarm system.
Central alarm.
Monitored
There's a
central
lot.
alarm
There's a
system.
lot of them around town. There's a lot of folks that have alarm systems in their houses.
And we'd like to request that any of them that are, somehow, if we can work together, that any of them do have that, sprinklered or not, that part of that alarm system, for us to respond, they're required to have the Knox box there. So we can get into these buildings without waiting for a key holder who's nowhere around, or being there at 2 o'clock in the morning, being told that there's no key holder available, and then you have to make a choice. Do I break this person's door, or do I just go home and hope it's not?
So in those systems, so they're tied into
ADT or a place like
so
that.
if it goes off in their house, it goes off in the fire
No,
station?
no.
Oh, they call you?
No, it'll go to a central alarm monitoring system like ADT,
Yeah.
Simply Safe, or anything like that. It'll go to them. They will call the owner first, trying to get contact,
Right.
and then they'll call the fire department, or they'll call dispatch. That's how it works.
Is that generally people that don't live here year-round, or do you have year-round residents?
There's a lot of alarms in this, isn't it?
I know.
We have a lot of them, and yes, the ones that don't live here year-round, that's part of the problem, where we're there at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's no owners that live in town, and they might have a key holder, and you're calling someone from South Hero to drive down to open up the door for us, and
Well, if you have,
Well, why don't
If
you
you have a
just
monitored
break the door
alarm,
down?
if you have,
Well, because it's expensive. Plus, if we break a door down, now we don't secure that property, and we've got to stay there. Now we're liable for the property of that building.
so if you have a monitored alarm, because then the alarm goes out, the fire department has to respond, you should have a Knox box. If you don't have a monitored alarm, somebody's called, and then you're not,
someone's there.
yeah, something's happened to instigate the call.
Backup?
So like if
In
you don't,
case the power outage?
your fire alarm goes off and
It's
calls
the
the
same as
people
you'll find in
automatically.
here, you'll find in the fire station, except they're basically hooked to your normal smoke detector.
Right.
So they're not.
In that
As long as there's power, batteries kept up.
Yeah, the battery will still dial out and still.
And that's where they would have a maintenance contract with it, and they'd have somebody come in and service it once a year, more than likely.
I'm going to shut down about 10 minutes on the topic. Do you have other things that you want to add as far as key points to?
So the pond section is okay?
No, the only thing we said was that if the access road or driveway serves more than, any project of 6 or more houses, which hasn't really changed, is a fire pond, with a dry hydrant. The only change would be on that is that the riser, I see some PVC risers out there, the riser should be of steel construction. And it should be 6-inch connection and not 4.5, and I haven't made that change yet, Dean, but I will.
So the riser is what?
The riser is the part that comes out, you see it above the road, that should be steel.
Originally, when it went in.
This is what a dry
hydrant.
hydrant is?
Originally, when they went in, they were all PVC, and what we were finding is over time, where it turned back to the pipe below, it was actually breaking right there from the vibration of the trucks and frost and whatever. And we found out if we go with the steel riser, which is the top down, and then turns with steel before it goes to the PVC, that they're not breaking anymore.
So where's the water coming from a dry hydrant?
The pond, wherever that water source is. So if you've got a large pond,
It's a big straw.
you've got a
Oh,
dry
you
hydrant.
just suck it up then, so it's
Yeah.
dry, and you
We
put a
draft
vacuum on it?
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
yeah,
It's still 90,000 gallons,
yeah, that hasn't changed.
or 90,000 usable water.
Right, it says 90,000 usable water, that doesn't include the water below the strainer, or in freezing situation, the water above it will be frozen.
Under connection for 8 feet of road or 14 feet driveway, change 12 by 15 turnout to 15 by 50.
Yeah, that should change, the turnout for the dry hydrant.
Again, it's not a turnout, it's a pullover.
Excuse me?
It's a pullover, not a turnout necessarily.
Right, yeah.
You got,
This area here for the dry hydrant should allow a truck to be able to go in sideways and draft off the side of the apparatus. So that's where that 15 by 50 would come in again, be able to turn in, get to the hydrant.
you guys call it a 10-foot riser? On the rise from the intake pipe to the cover will be no more than 10 feet?
Yeah, the riser is the part that comes out of the ground.
It doesn't match your sketch. Your sketch calls 11. So it's just not your sketch, but the sketch that's part of the standard shows 11, one calls out 10. Just,
I think
10-foot center to center.
11-foot max lift. It says 11-foot max lift.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Those do vary when they're built.
yeah, that's going to depend on the
Depending
depth of
on
the water.
Some of them are, some of the ones we have are straight pipes out because the ponds are actually feeding them.
Yeah.
We have to put valves on them. But I think if we reference the plan that they have to make it usable water for us and reference the plan, then.
Yep.
I mean, we've got a hydrant up on Toad Road that works fantastically, and it is probably, I'm gonna say close to 200 feet from the water source, uphill. So, you know, I don't know how far down the riser goes. It doesn't have to go very far because it's all going down into the water, 200 feet away from where the pipe is. So to say it's gotta be a 10 or 11 foot, I think is a misnomer. Again, have it engineered, say this is where it's gotta go, gotta be below the frost line, gotta have the strainer out in the water so far in the depth and stuff like that, so. And we can redo, there's new sketches out there, that's a pretty old sketch.
Do you guys know what the suction pull on your truck is? Or can you find that out from the manufacturer? Because that would be useful.
Yeah, all the fire trucks, it's a 20-foot maximum lift.
Well, we should be able to draft from 33 foot, one atmosphere.
Yeah.
But what the pull is on it, I have no
It's usually
clue.
about 20 feet.
It's not a drastic fall. And we're not pulling water, we're vacating the air out of it, and atmospheric pressure pushes the water up in. We don't suck the air out of there.
So I'm just thinking in terms of next steps, so I'm assuming you guys have this document, you can edit it and update it.
I've been working on it, yeah.
And
I'll
then-
do Dean or Daryl.
So are you working on the actual document, the 1987 document?
Yes.
And making changes to that?
Yes.
So I'm wondering if what we really want to do is call this really what it is, it's an ordinance.
I mean, I don't know what the definition.
Yeah, I guess the only
I don't know if
question
that's a
would be,
legal question.
yeah,
or what.
whether, if it's an ordinance, whether then it applies to existing properties also, but that's, I think it is a legal question that I would like to get legal feedback on.
Yeah, it's a legal question, but I know in the cities, when they update sprinkler ordinances, that people
It's
are
grandfather.
grandfathered unless they're gutting their whole house.
Right, it would be the same thing with this.
Yeah.
But, well, all we're trying to do is trying to figure out whether it needs to be an ordinance, so when the
Yeah,
planning
right.
commission or the zoning administrator are looking at it and referencing it, these say recommended standards. It would be nice if it was something that would have to be done as like an ordinance
Does the town have
to require it.
So let's talk about, following Peter's question, so you're working on this?
Yes, sir.
So what's your goal to get it into either the us or to planning, a couple of weeks kind of thing, or a month?
Yeah, I think I could, next meeting, which is what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think it could go first to the planning commission for review, and then in the meantime, we'll get attorney's counsel as far as whether it should be an ordinance or not.
Yeah, then when you put your spin on it, right, then you ask the attorney what's the
Right.
appropriate thing.
Yeah.
If it's a reference in a land use regulation, then it'd be an ordinance, and we could all approve it.
Right, yeah,
If it's embedded in the land use regulations, then it goes to the town vote, I
right,
assume.
exactly, yeah.
It's okay. You'll get back to, yeah? Huh?
I got my hand up.
I'm blind, yeah.
I'm not sure I like the part where it says, any building permit issued before you have it dry hydrant and operational. I could see where you have it, if you know, you couldn't get your final permit for your house, but.
This is the old one, this is the.
We're gonna get rid of that one?
That's 1997, you're right.
I think what it probably should say, Robert, is instead of a permit, it should be the CL.
Okay.
But that should be something that's, I'm
I think
hoping,
it was put in at the permit stage because when buildings under construction burn, they burn pretty quick and you need water then too, but I think that's.
Yeah, most communities require, a lot of places, the fire marshal would require the hydrant access prior to starting construction, so that if the wood structure, before you start putting wood up, so that if it starts to burn during construction, you have something you can do with it.
I know in the city, as you build In the city, you gotta have each floor protected before you go to the next one.
Yeah, in Burlington,
An operating standpipe system in the building.
Burlington, you gotta have the hydrant in place before you start
Are you
putting
changing
wood
this?
up.
Yes or no?
Yes.
No, it's
existing. It's existing.
That's what was there since 97.
So is it gonna be changed from?
We're looking at the whole thing.
Yeah.
Perhaps an ordinance as a standard for the town.
Does an ordinance take the flexibility away of these guys looking at it and maybe adjusting things?
You can change ordinances any time, but there's a process we go through, legal review, a format.
I think
You have to have a hearing.
Where we work with developers, is that correct?
Yeah.
That case by case.
case by case sometimes, if you do this, we're happy with it kind of thing.
I think the ordinance can specify that
Yeah.
in some cases, you know, if it's,
Well, if this becomes an ordinance, I mean, I'm assuming within this, you have that there may be adjustments to it. Recommendations by the fire department for certain situations.
But I mean, over the next 60 or 90 days that goes through this process, you get all the input you want, but then it becomes a little bit bureaucratic. If you want changes a year from now, it might be a bit of a process to go through the same thing.
To change the ordinance, but you can have a paragraph in there that allows for modifications as approved by the
You can make
fire
minor
chief.
amendments.
Yeah,
Site-specific exceptions.
yeah,
So we can,
because you'll never be able to predict everything.
Because every driveway is going to have some unique.
Right, well, I mean, the Pizer subdivision is a prime example. The barn is nowhere near halfway in their road, but they've got a place to put a turnaround, so they're putting it there for us. That'd be a case-by-case basis, and we're gonna work with you the best that we can. So, like I've done with, I did it with Remo and stuff up at his as well, so,
Thanks for coming out, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
thanks.
Good.
Meeting adjourned.
Hi, John. Are there adjustments to the agenda?
No.
No adjustments? Any public comment? Yes, Jerry.
I'd like to, in the future, anytime you renew the farming of the town lands, like the park and things like that, that it stipulates that all bales be moved within 96 hours of having been made. Right now, we're going down Route 7, and there's a whole bunch of bales out there that are rotting, and it's definitely not adding to the scenic beauty.
Oh, adds to the ambiance.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If they're properly baled, they don't rot.
They don't what?
They don't rot.
They're all protected in
I
plastic.
got news for you. Those are not wrapped in plastic.
Net wrap.
They don't have to be wrapped in plastic.
Net wrap.
You lose about 3 inches of the perimeter, and then the rest of it's good.
Not even that in some parts.
I know that for sure. Because I did hundreds
That's
of
a
them.
tough request, Jerry. They're all over the town. Edge of the road.
Yeah, but a lot of them are not on town land.
So,
Oh, you're saying town land. That's your point?
That's what I said. At least that's what I meant. I think that's what I
Oh,
said.
you may have. Well, I think we're going to have to think about that one. Okay. Any other public comments? Thanks. Select board updates?
I spoke with the library today, and they're getting pretty close to.
I can't hear you.
I spoke to the library today. I spoke to the library today, and they're getting close to rolling out their capital plan for their, a little bit behind schedule, but their plan for getting capital for their improvements, for their addition.
So, I mean, we've talked about this in the past. They have a goal of like raising half of it privately or some figure?
Yep, they were trying to have that done and be doing that this summer, but organization took a little longer than expected. They wanted to make sure that it was done right. before they started in a hurry.
And then they would come, let's say they raised half, and then they'd come to the town or
Yeah.
for a vote for an agenda item?
Come to us to see, you know, with some of the results, how much we've got committed, what we want for a bond, depending. They really haven't started getting the funds. They're about to start getting the funds signed up. They haven't been doing that.
We had a real site plan on this that says exactly where everything is gonna be and what's gonna be lost.
There's a site plan and a model.
They had a
I
model.
thought that was just kind of, I didn't realize that was the
Well,
actual everything.
It's a site plan, it's not the construction drawings. But, you know, that's what goes first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, you don't have everything down to the T before you have your funding, because there's no point in spending all the money for it if you don't have your funding. That's part of the funding, is to develop the specific plans. I mean, you've got some architectural renderings, a rough site plan, where it's gonna go. I mean,
And then
the
do we
site
have
plan
the
says
ins-
it's, what, like 50 or 60 feet addition to the existing building. Well, that's pretty obvious to figure out what's gonna go, everything that's within that 50 feet.
And what did they do about parking on that plan?
They've talked to Daryl with respect to the parking rules and occupancies, so.
So they would come to us after the capital campaign or as they get ready to start it? Or what do you think?
I think you'll start seeing discussion of the capital campaign, and at some point in time when think they've got as many donations as they can sign up and they're looking at floating a bond, they'll come and say, okay, we've got blank amount of money, so we're thinking we want to ask for a bond for this amount. I think that'd be the point I think there'll be more updates. I don't think that's gonna, we'll hear from them before that point.
And you think the objective is to have it in the March town meeting, you think, or?
I think at this point, how would you say that? The schedule's probably flexible. It just depends on how the process goes. So.
Okay.
What I heard with Margaret, that their budget, they're coming in with their budget around October 8th and for their operating budget, but they might have an update on their fundraising around then too.
Yeah.
Any other updates from members? Are we expecting anybody? Are they here for the open space agreement?
We're not expecting. The open space agreement is a result of a subdivision by Remo and Donna Pizzagalli. The Planning Commission required the open space agreement as part of the approval. And the open space areas are in two portions. There's 28 acres on the westerly side adjacent to Churchill Road, and that's in the area adjacent, well, the purpose is to protect the view shed from Route 7. And then on the easterly side, there's 18.74 acres. That's adjacent to McCabe's Brook and associated wetlands and wildlife habitat. So the Pizzagallis have signed the open space agreement, so they're okay with it. It's a standard form that's used for most open space agreements. It was originally drafted by the town attorney without edits except for the description of the open space areas and the purpose of the protection.
So is the purpose of the open space agreement to allow them to proceed with is it a 3-lot development? Is that?
It's already approved. It's
Okay,
already, the lots have been approved. They're, accepted building lots with a condition that the open space agreement be executed. It has been executed and recorded in the land records.
so it's the select board's responsibility to approve?
The open space agreement.
Okay. And I assume is it recommended by, is it zoning or planning?
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission?
Yep,
And they've recommended
yes,
approval?
yeah.
There's supposed to be any kind of a number or anything on this
The map
map slide?
that will be filled in by the town clerk.
Okay.
Anybody have any comments or a motion or?
So, there's a comment in here that says existing trees located along or near the northerly line of building will be maintained to screen any future structures. How do we,
That was a condition of planning commission.
how is that documented? Or is it?
That is really a question for the planning commission. Let me just see whether that's,
It's kind of right in the middle of the lot one, right
yeah,
under.
it's right there. It was part of the decision.
So if they're like all ash trees and they all die. Oh, well.
Oh, you said lot there against the Mutton Hill portion here, or, because
Yeah.
those are all
No, right.
evergreens.
That'd be the north side. It says
North
right
side.
under the words lot one, that note your finger was on there.
It's
Yeah.
on the west side,
It says existing trees located along near the northerly line of lot one.
Those are all coniferous trees right now, right?
Now they're maples, aren't they?
This is just a couple hundred yards
No,
off of
it's the
Mutton
other
Hill
end.
Road.
It's right next to their driveway. It's way up there.
Oh, way up there, by their driveway. Oh, this is their driveway, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's just a comment about, we always put notes in and we don't have any cops to enforce it. Why do we put them in?
Yeah, I guess the language in the open space agreement is the tree line screening structures on lots 1, 2, and 3 from Route 7 and shared Churchill Road shall be maintained.
It must be the
I
driveway.
don't think it's the trees along the driveway, I think it's the trees along Route 7, and I think it's a line of trees that go from about 300 feet away from old Route 7 to the east.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Those are the ones. And there's not very many ash in that line, they're mostly oak or brush.
Well, my comment was probably more general. When we come up with we come up with requirements, but we don't have a cop to enforce them. Or,
You do have, of course, you have a zoning administrator.
what do you do when a tree dies?
Well, you know that.
You can get pine bark beetles too, and all your conifers go. I guess my question would be,
Well, it says it shall be maintained, so I don't know if that means that if something's died, they replace it.
that would be in the individual decision then, wouldn't it?
That's in this open space agreement.
Oh,
It's on page 5, and it's labeled D, second, one from the top.
Tree line shall be maintained, well.
It all depends on your definition of maintained.
you could read.
Say adequately.
In the eye of the beholder, huh?
Let's move on, they're all.
I'm fine with this.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the open space agreement with Remo and Donna Pizzagalli,
I'll second.
dated the 13th day of July, 2018.
Do you want to authorize one of?
And authorize the chair to sign.
Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next topic, Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission request for technical assistance for the lane drainage problem in front of John's house, or lakeside of your house.
So is this to authorize the letter to be sent?
So what is our role here then?
It's really to authorize the request to regional planning to provide technical assistance to assist with designing a fix for this problem, which is the culvert's old and probably caved in, collapsed.
So we own the land and we're washing into the lake. So we're going to seek assistance, but this ultimately has probably have a cost impact. I mean, where's Junior? Oh, yeah, what do you think the fix is? I mean, without all the design being done, but.
New culvert.
Does the,
140-foot culvert?
and where is that located?
It's just past the first camp, which used to be Henry Lane's camp.
Yeah,
And I know for a fact that what had happened, there used to be an open ditch between the first camp and the second camp. And over the years, this was 30, 40 years ago, every now and then Henry would dig up a culvert on the town road that was that size, 2 foot, and he'd add a piece on that was old culvert and put it in there. And over the years, they made it to the lake. And then they filled it in and they had lawn between them. So what has happened now is those old culverts have just collapsed. So the culverts we have since replaced the culvert under the road, but just under the road. Because there was holes coming in it, and there has been holes out on the lawn side, and they patched them up, or we patched them that were near there. It needs a new culvert. I think that's the only real fix to
Would a
it.
culvert be the solution, or an open ditch?
Well, an open ditch is what was there. I think the biggest problem now is that right over the culvert, somebody has planted trees, evergreen trees. So either the trees need to be removed to replace the culvert to back to where its existing spot is now. And if you didn't remove the culvert and you kind of set it off to the side, then you'd have to move the one that crosses the road as well. It's one continuous culvert. But yeah, it could go back to an open ditch, but I don't know if, the leaseholders.
so the rainwater is going, which is the other issue, going directly into the lake. Out on East Thompson Point Road, we did all this work to have water, getting filtered through the ground and so forth. This is right on the lake. So we're just going to, the solution, just make it so it doesn't erode? And
Well,
then,
it's basically, on the north side of the road, on the north side of Lane's Lane.
Yep.
It's all vegetated, okay?
Yep.
So it's no open dirt. They don't plow that field or haven't plowed that field there for years. So there's really not a lot of sediment that would get washed into the lake as it is now. Now, at some point, we will clean the ditch, down through there, and then there is a chance for sediment then to go through there.
so you're still looking at like 140 feet from the road to the,
Yeah, unless you do an open ditch.
Is there enough fall for a culvert to work?
What's that?
Is there enough fall for a culvert to work?
drop off, yeah, I think so.
To the river at the lake, you mean? It's not a water drop off.
It's pretty flat.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where the water level is in the lake.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna,
Right now, there's not a lot of wash at the end of the culvert, it's all in his driveway.
Right. That's part of the problem, is the end of the culvert that discharges into the lake when the water is at normal elevations is blocked, and there isn't enough head to push through, so it overruns the top of the culvert, and runs down my driveway, and you saw the pictures. I'm faced with that every spring, so I've been fixing it, quote unquote, for 10 years or whatever, and I just thought I'd ask the question, because it doesn't seem like it's good money, you know what I mean? I'm spending $1,000 a year to make this repair, but it's all ending up in the lake, you know, and it just seems like it's crazy, so. And the system there, I didn't have anything to do with, and I'm not surprised the way Junior described it, you know, that's the way it is, so.
So we're here to see if we can get assistance, technical assistance.
right, instead of just replacing the culvert.
Or what, well, we're not at that stage yet. Do they recommend a ditch or a culvert or,
Yeah, see what they recommend.
right?
You can agree with it or not agree with
They're
it.
gonna have the state, what's the Water Quality Act, 168?
That's what I was referring to.
The 200 feet from the property line drainage rules. When you talk to the county, you're gonna get the state involved.
But it is pre-existing. It's been there way before any of this came into effect, so there's not much they can do about that. I mean, the biggest problem is if we replace the culvert, is the trees would have to be probably taken out. I don't believe they can save.
Whether to replace the culvert or you need a ditch.
Yep, either way, the trees would have to go, yeah. I'm not sure whose trees they are. I think they're like right on the line.
Yeah, I think Steve Park.
I would be surprised if settling ponds and other things weren't involved in any new fix.
Settling ponds and what?
Well, that's what I was thinking on the north side of
Yeah.
Lane's Lane, putting a settling pond
have it
on
go
the
the other
north
way.
side,
Yeah.
so before it goes underneath the road.
So you're looking for a motion for us to get technical assistance? Is there a motion to get technical assistance?
Sure, I'll make a motion to request that CCRPC for technical assistance for the Lane's Lane drainage problem.
Second.
Okay. So it's probably going to take when do you think they would assist us? Just have to get into their annual plan and
No, I think it'll be this fall.
I mean, if it's draining into the water, I would think it would give a sense of urgency.
Yeah, yeah,
As the guys are saying, do you run it north
right.
or settling or something? Okay, any other questions? John, you're good with what we're going to do? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Didn't vote,
You didn't vote?
no.
Okay. Okay, next.
Well, after we get the technical assistance, we'll get into the price.
Affordable Housing Ad Hoc Committee. Thank you for being here. Are you folks here for that or just? Okay. So on the 17th of August, you folks were all here and you had a draft resolution, which we have in our packet of 5 recommended resolutions that we discussed. There are only 3 people at the select board meeting at that date. You, Carrie, I think if I remember, wanted a little more time to think about it. So we delayed the vote to either approve or modify these resolutions to tonight, expecting a full board. So
Not expecting to vote. You're expecting us to vote on this?
resolutions, yeah. It's not the larger document. It's just,
I want to see the larger document.
the intent was for the principles to be agreed upon, we can go through them again, and then that provides guidance to go through the policy and procedure document. You want to, I don't know, Peter or somebody walk them through one at a time, or walk us through again, or?
We can do it. It's pretty short.
Yeah.
You've seen it now on
Three
4 different
times.
occasions.
Yeah.
Dean, you got it up on the board? Maybe you can step through it, Dean.
Okay, this is a resolution from the Affordable Housing Working Group, which, just to be clear, was not appointed by the Select Board. They're just residents that are interested in this topic. And they have 5 points that are sort of fundamental to a change to the policies and procedures in terms of what they believe would make it more effective. One is the policy procedures currently have priorities for funding and supposedly favor Charlotte residents over nonprofits and rental over sales, and they believe those priorities aren't necessary and may dissuade some people from thinking they would apply for a grant.
What we're hoping, Lane, is that you would take these up one at a time and give a clear indication whether people are shy about some formal resolution. That's okay, but just some clear statements about what you think makes sense to alter some of the underlying policies, these be the key ones, as we've presented for the past 3 or 4 months. So then we can go back and provide more specific. So what this says, as Dean points out, there are 3 points here that we just don't think make sense. And they have held back production under the program. There's a statement that makes, that recognizes a priority for rehabilitation over new construction. Almost all of the production that's occurred since the program was established has been new built. It states that resident owners of property have priority over others, like nonprofits. Almost all the production to date has been from outside nonprofits, sometime in collaboration with local for-profit owners. And the third is rental property over sales. And most of the production has been rental, and that seems to make sense. So we're suggesting setting aside those stated priorities and enable some air to come into the program. Proposals come to you for decisions, for funding decisions, and if there's some tightening in the future that you think makes sense, that can be done. So,
yeah, what's the problem with having priorities? I mean, this program hasn't had a lot of applicants. And I can see if you have 50 applicants all applying at the same time, the priorities would kick in.
right.
But with this, we've had how many projects since inception, and worrying about whether these actual priorities are in there or not. I don't see why they couldn't be in there.
They create confusion, Frank. That's why we're suggesting removing them. I mean, if people are ignoring them and they're receiving funding, then they're irrelevant, they're gratuitous, whatever you want to call it. So for the purpose of clarity, set them aside so that people aren't saying, well, wait a second, I'm interested in building new freestanding housing here, but they're telling me, the select board's telling me that they prefer rental. What does that mean? So that's why we suggested that. It's an issue of clarity. So.
Number 2.
Do you want to go through them all, or can we take them one at a time? You've seen these things.
Right.
And you can, Frank obviously doesn't care much for the first one, so.
I don't either.
I don't like any of them.
I don't care for them either.
I guess I'm wondering if you just want to read them all and then take comments?
I think we should, rather than, let's keep going. Maybe we can approve like 2, 3, 4, and 5 and drop 1, for example. Let's keep going. So number 2.
Number 2, grant awards that are made to Charlotte property owners can be repaid without financial penalties after 5 years of completion and occupancy. Affordability restrictions that are tied to other funding sources or the land use regulations may encumber or require properties for longer periods or in perpetuity. And that's what that's meant to say is there are projects, if someone comes in for a subdivision, they're proposing a density bonus, our regulations require affordability in perpetuity.
Well, that's number 4.
Right, exactly, yep.
So we're talking about number 2.
Yep, so what this says is, it just specifies that in cases where you're not having a density bonus or a not-for-profit is involved, where they're required to have affordability in perpetuity, that a grant may be repaid with approval of the select board if somebody wants to withdraw from the program after a specified period of time. An amnesty program, if you will.
Do you have to pay back grants typically?
The current policy is you have to, if you're going to withdraw, you have to pay a penalty, a sizable penalty.
This is for affordable housing in perpetuity. So this eases up the concept of once you get a $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 grant, gives you an out without, you're going to be less willing to do this if it's got to be done forever. And so this allows an out for that person and in return the grant.
Right, but isn't that what this is for? It's to create affordable housing for the town of Shaw.
There you go, good point, Frank.
So
But-
there's also state rules. There's some affordable housing in town that has state covenants. So let's say I'm using money from this fund and from some other fund, and I build a facility that's affordable housing that's got state covenants involved, and I decide I want to sell it and I want my $30,000 back from this, but then there's also state rules that overlap with.
Then it's in perpetuity because you got some other.
Then you can't do it.
Right.
So are we going to say that state and federal rules preempt Charlotte rules when it comes to refunds?
That's what this is intended to say, is that there may be other restrictions, whether it's from funding sources or the town's land use regulations.
That may prohibit any refund.
Right.
Is there a time frame?
Says 5 years, and this.
I mean, there's some concern that without some of that stuff, you're giving somebody a interest-free loan for 5 years to work on their house because they're saying it's affordable. I know if I'll have the money in 5 years, I won't pay it back then, and I won't have had to pay mortgage on that.
I heard that same.
If it's a rental, then you're being a good guy and you're renting your place to somebody that's affordable. So maybe you can forgive the interest. But if it's your own house that you live in, you basically got a mortgage interest-free loan for 5 years.
I heard that a few days ago.
I like a lot of these concepts, but I think there's other stuff that needs to happen. I mean, every time, I missed the last meeting, and I'm sorry for that, but every time I've said, I still don't know what is our goal? How much affordable housing are we looking for? I think we need to evaluate what's out there, how much we have, and see where we are. I mean, we're proposing to throw taxpayer money at something, and we don't know where we are in the water. I don't. I know that you have given us some information as to how that's calculated, whether it's an affordable based on the size of the family and any number of things, and sure, there's a formula out there, but I think that I need to see, before I'm comfortable changing all these rules, what the results of that is, and whether we want to have somebody make this study, whether we count, there's actually, somebody's got an apartment over their barn that doesn't show up, but that's affordable housing for one person. There's a house here that's for rent, somebody just bought this one. We can use the formula you gave us that says, in Chittenden County, for a family of 3, it should be less than this, which is the average income. That would establish a level of value for an affordable house based on number of bedrooms. Is a 2-bedroom is going to be affordable for a family of 2 versus a family of 8. It's going to be a different number, different size house. And I would like to see us put some effort into seeing exactly what we got, and then asking the townspeople, what do you want? What do you think we want? As opposed to just saying, we need more housing. Well, why? Well, because the school enrollment's going down. Well,
It's not really going down.
I don't know if that's a good,
It's going up a little bit,
a good
actually.
reason. So I think this is, I agree with quite a few of these things. If people want to pay back their housing, they should. If all of the regulations and priorities are hard to, that's assuming you got 10 people in line and you can assign the priorities. If you got one guy that shows up, what do you do with the priorities? I mean, they're useless. So I think this is good work, but I think we need more to do to it. And we've got this money in the fund. I don't know, maybe we should ask the county if they can help us inventory what we have. You can do some of it through the lister's office, but some of it's going to be, someone's going to have to go through the files and say that, geez, on this property, there's a trailer or an auxiliary house that they're renting. Inventory it and see how much affordable housing we actually have.
Right, but but with the being able to repay, this guarantees nothing. This guarantees no affordable housing. It all be paid back within 5 years, no penalties. You haven't changed your affordable housing in Shalott, because in 5 years, that accessory dwelling, we'll call it, now is not affordable. Maybe being lived in by a family member now, not even rented anymore.
I agree. That's where it overlaps. That's where we need to do more work. We need to see how it overlaps with the state. Because if somebody like Habitat for Humanity gets money for this, they have tax covenants that override this.
Right, they have their own restrictions.
So, well, they have their oaths, and then when you apply to the state, like some people have for tax covenants for affordable housing, they get, I forget what Betsy said, I think it was 60% of the value is what they get taxed on. Mm-hmm. But then you pay less tax, but then the state has rules for covenants for affordable housing. So I think there's a lot of players, and I think that this is, like I said, this is a good start, but this is a big can of worms that a lot of people get involved in. The federal government, the state government, private companies that, like Habitat for Humanity, and that's what they do. Whereas the town, we're a select board that kind of is dabbling in this a little bit, and I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with all the ramifications of not knowing all the facts or the information. So how's that for a diatribe?
Sorry, I think you started a little bit before 7:35, so I didn't quite make it. I'd like to go back to the beginning, which was in 2006, 7, 8, just before the recession, when housing prices in Charlotte were skyrocketing, and it was particularly unaffordable for people to live here. There weren't very many options for people who, were on fixed budgets, but who might be working at the school, working in the town hall, working in the immediate area. And there was a strong feeling at that time that the town of Charlotte really needed to have some ways to encourage more housing to be built that was affordable. I mean, that's the key issue. Then we had the recession and property values kind of stabilized for a while, and it, in some cases, became a little more affordable. At this point, we've passed that point, and we're now starting to see a hotter market. And we're going to run into the exact same problem again. Now, the housing that's been built, thanks really in many ways to this fund and to the like Habitat for Humanity and Champlain Housing Trust Fund, who have been active in developing affordable housing around Chittenden County. We do have some, you know, newer houses in Charlotte that were built that do have perpetual affordability requirements as part of the ownership of them. It's in the deeds. They have to stay affordable. And that is a good thing because as the market becomes hotter, pricing on that isn't going to become out of sight for people who might be the next person to buy them. So I think that's a good model. And one of the things we're saying here is to just do away with the priority that's in the current procedures, which says money should only be focused on something other than that model that I just described. We're just saying that's a good model. That's one perhaps we should be encouraging. In terms of where we go from here, well, right now we have about $140,000 in the fund. The taxpayers already voted to put that in the fund. The purpose of it is to encourage affordable housing. The question is, how are we promoting it? How are we making that happen? The fund has just been sitting there. There hasn't been any real active effort to put it to good use. And it's losing value as it sits there because it's not earning a lot of interest. It's not an investment. And 2 years ago, you wanted to borrow from it to do sewage at Thompson's Point.
Well, that was a dumb idea.
That was not its purpose. The taxpayers put it there for affordable housing. You asked us to sit down and see, okay, well, how can the fund be a little more approachable? How can we make it work better? Well, these are just some ideas for that. And we'd like, you know, to see that happen. But the most important thing from my perspective is the money be put to good use, that people know about it, it gets some marketing and promotion. So whether these rules are changed or not, that effort is one that I think is really important. And we're just suggesting some ways to make it more flexible so that when the select board has grant proposals coming to it, it's not tied down to such strict rules. And also, we're also recommending that grants could possibly be higher than are in the current procedures. And currently, it's just $10,000 per unit. That doesn't go very far in supporting the development of a house or a condominium or, you know, a rental apartment that's going to be used at what are considered affordable rates under the guidelines. So it's just a way to make it more attractive to someone who might want to build something. And as Frank suggested, you know, certainly one of the efforts to promote it could be to work with the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board to make sure that people who come in with projects, whether they're for seniors housing or affordable housing, that they know that in addition to density bonuses, there is some funding that could help to provide some more units or to make it more possible to have some of the units affordable. So that's all we're trying to do. I mean, it's not anything new. What we're not proposing anything new. We're proposing just more flexibility and having a little redoing of the priorities so that your hands are not tied when you have grant proposals come in.
So when the voters, I wasn't here when the voters approved this. I may have been here but not voting. I mean, was it 10 years ago? I mean, $10,000 didn't buy you much then either.
Yeah, true.
Why, how did that, what was the thought behind that?
The voters didn't say 10,000.
No, the
Committee did.
The Board of Assessors approved that.
The voters were asked to look at the fact that at that time the taxpayers were subsidizing conservation projects with a regular contribution from the taxpayer. And I was one of the people who pointed out that Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, in its very mission statement and its organizational logic, recognized the connection between conserving land and putting pressure on housing prices. And my argument was, we've been supporting conservation for a long time. Maybe we should think about supporting, just like VHCB does, some housing to offset the positive, well, the consequences of that positive conservation program. So, from my perspective, that was what was persuasive to me. And there's a lot of parallels there. For instance, I pointed out to you before. You very correctly asked, what's our goal for affordable housing? what's our goal for conserved farmland in this town? That ain't no plan anywhere.
We don't have enough.
Right, so we don't have enough. But we're not put that same requirement on the conservation initiative. You know, the more the merrier is sort of the limit there. And I'm not saying that's bad, but why is there a different standard for something that, at least from a state level policy perspective, is directly connected? And I'll just address again another thing you said before. I think you're right that we should know that the townspeople have expressed support for this idea. And I think if you go back in the town plans that have been passed over the last 20 years, every single one has had support in the form of that major policy statement of the town that affordable housing is an important goal for the town to pursue. Now, if you want to rework that policy deliberation on a town-wide basis, I'm all for that. I think that engaging the community in discussions about important concepts like affordable housing, conservation, economic development on a town-wide level is a great idea, and I think that the Planning Commission should be encouraged and provided funding to do that in an effective way. But for right now, we have a policy statement about affordable housing that's pretty clear and has been supported successively for decades. And so the last piece of your formula I also agree with, which is we ought to have some kind of an assessment of what's available now. And I think that's a super good idea, and I think if the select board wants to find a way to get that data, you'd be well served in moving ahead. And I don't fault you for not being fully in support of these ideas, as Nancy said. You gave us a very limited mandate in this work, and partly because we refused to let you expand it too far. We wanted to provide something meaningful and successful in a short period of time. What's that?
So we wanted indentured servants, come on.
So I don't know, hopefully that's helpful. I mean, you asked good questions. I think we give you some answers, but not all.
When this was voted, was this considered a one-time shot, or is this going to be a continuous funding? If somebody shows up next year and says, I want to use this $100 grand, does that mean that it's going to be, well, what if somebody wants more than is there per year? We're not probably on the hook to create more, but is this in perpetuity fund that?
I don't believe, as Peter said, there was no numbers thrown around, at least in the public aspect of how this was debated and voted on at a town meeting. All that happened behind the scenes or later on in the work that the Selectboard committee did.
My
but
question.
I can tell you that, let me make this point. It was clearly contrasted and compared to the conservation fund, which is perceived, I think, as maybe not in perpetuity, but a regular part of the appetite for the taxpayers to fund in this town. So I think it was in that context that it was adopted.
But there's no obligation.
Yeah.
Well, that's my question is, do you have to raise your hand to speak, or do you just butt in when you want to butt in, or what's the format we're using here? Nancy, you made a lot of good points. Mike, you just made a statement. I've heard Fred's, but nobody has answered Frank Teddy's question about how are we going to have any more affordable housing in 5 years if you can pay it back. We're not a bank. We're not FDIC approved. We're not in the lending business. And I think for someone like me, some of the projects I've seen in the past, some that have been approved, and the funding that came from, the money that came from this fund shouldn't have come out of this fund to go to the non-for-profit. And when you look at the proposal that was proposed for the old Lantern property 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was, it really wasn't a project for affordability for people working at the school or in the town office. So I think you're trying to do a lot of things, but I don't think you know where you're going with it. And I'm not so sure the committee here has all the details worked out, because heck, I might apply for $100,000 and give you an affordable apartment and put the rest in grain storage. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Well, why would you grant it? I'm sorry to jump
Let's have some, Stuart, yeah.
I'm not quite sure where we are on the agenda. Are you going through all these, or should I just comment
We
generally?
have a half an hour more. The idea was to talk about the concepts and try to get those approved. But Fritz is rightfully saying, well, where do we want to go?
Well, I can address that. I can be general about it.
Okay.
With the caveat that all I read was what's in your packet, information. There was probably more details that Mike and the others know about.
Well, we've been doing this for many meetings, so we have a thick packet.
I'm going on the basis that the summary is right. It seems to me that, I mean, like Robert just said, I mean, we're doing a lousy job as a bank because we're raising money we don't have any authority to raise for 2012 and 2013, right? I mean, the funding was supposed to stop in fiscal year 2011, according to what I'm seeing here.
There's no additional taxpayer money been raised.
Well, where's the extra money?
Nothing's been allotted for this.
Hasn't been allocated,
Hasn't
right?
been allocated for this, hasn't been asked for from the voters since then.
It's money that's been in our account.
This hasn't been allocated, it's just there.
Yes.
Okay, got it. But it just seems, based on everything I've read, I mean, there's all the various restrictions on it, perpetual affordability, there's a whole series of priorities that the town adopted. And by our own admission, there's only like one project that's complied. And what I'm hearing is the proposals is to lower the standards and give out more money.
Yes.
Which is completely counterintuitive to me. If you look at a situation where you've had standards that are universally recognized as sensible, they haven't been followed, money's been given out contrary to them, now you're saying, well, throw out the standards and give more money. It makes no sense to me at all,
But
as a taxpayer.
we're not attracting candidates for affordable housing. That's the point.
There's a reason for that, Lane, because it's not easy. It's not easy. And the way to make affordable housing is two things. One, you make it easier to build, which means you increase the density requirements in town, get rid of the 5 acres, make it easier. And you just have people that don't look for that kind of a margin on their project. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's not rocket science. You don't need grants to fund affordable housing. And particularly the business of it's otherwise like, to your point, it's like a bridge loan. Like all of a sudden, somebody can use the money for a while. The appreciation on the property initial lot is going to catch up to any penalty you pay, and you're out the door and free and clear.
There is no penalty after 5 years.
Well, whatever. I mean, that's my point. I mean, the idea of perpetuity is perpetuity because it's a policy, not just a bridge loan. That's effectively, public financing for private convenience. I don't get it.
So it's my 6 years around, we've had about 2 candidates for this.
Dave Nichols, the Nichols Farm being one of them.
Nichols Apartment was one of them, right. So we're trying, well, I've already said it. The point of view here is to encourage it. And you have objections to if you maintain the standards the way they are, it's not enough to encourage anybody to seek a grant.
Well, I'd like to say that the neighborhood, at least in East Charlotte, really changed over the last 6 years or so. I think that advertising, the fact that we do have this fund, is a good idea to do now with the new 40-somethings that are living in. Maybe they do want to have their friends move into an apartment on their property and they all, live happily ever after they've got 15 years.
There's just one more piece that I forgot. Senior housing. I mean, I'm virtually up there. I consider myself a senior.
Just barely, right?
Just barely. Maybe. No, don't you say a word. No, but I mean, but the demographics of the town, we're getting older. I mean, that's what I understand the demographics of the town are, is we're all getting older, there's not young people moving in. Why? Because it's too expensive, but we're creating senior housing? I mean, that's totally counterintuitive again. I mean, it all feels good, but at the end of the day, it's not sustainable economically. I mean, no board of directors in a bank can give you this.
It seems like in the last 10 years, we've had three, that I can think of, 3 projects in Charlotte. You've got the 3 houses across from the old Lantern. Was that Habitat?
That's Habitat.
No, I don't know what it was. That's what I'm asking.
It is Habitat.
That is Habitat. It's not what?
Didn't get a grant.
No, but it used
I didn't say that.
money.
I just said there's 3 projects.
Right, affordable housing, those are Habitat.
There, one over by Jesuit's house on,
Project, weren't there 4 houses there? 5.
right, but that's Habitat also,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And then how about the one on Shaw-Heinsberg Road past Spears Store? There's 4 or 5 houses there. That was done less than 10 years ago. My question is, if those were done in the last, that's 3 projects in the last 10 years, it doesn't make any difference whether they ask for any help. Why isn't this group talking with Habitat for Humanity and trying to encourage them to come to town? They have the rules already designed. If they have money from us, why don't they apply for the money? And I don't understand why we have to have a citizen ad hoc committee try to change the rules when.
Go to town meeting and it's requested.
Well, I understand that, but I don't understand why. When you've got Habitat for Humanity, and is there another organization that does it also? A state organization?
Champlain Housing, there's a couple of them in Burlington.
I mean, why aren't we approaching them? They have the rules set. What are we trying to do this ourselves?
Mike, what's your answer to that?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, and one of the things that we're asking the policy change, to consider the policy change, is to de-emphasize only for Charlotte residents, only for, those list of priorities. We're suggesting that we flip those so that a committee that actually does have the authority to do that, and by the way, we don't. Okay, we haven't been appointed as a committee to administer this program or do anything other than give the select board some suggestions about how to make it more flexible, as Nancy said. Okay,
Those rules don't say for Charlotte residents only. It says in favor grant from Charlotte residents.
The current one does make it states a clear preference for making grants.
A preference for Charlotte residents.
Yes.
But it doesn't say they have to be Charlotte residents.
No, but according to Stuart, that's what the grants that have been given out to non-residents have been in violation of this policy. So you might work that out with him. But what you're saying, I agree with what you're saying, that what the select board may consider doing is, because those projects that you pointed to have been successful, they've been organic in the sense that they've not necessarily required grant funding from the town to be successful. Those appear, from a market perspective, to be the kinds of things that succeed. So one of our thoughts upon observing that is, well, maybe we give the policy some flexibility so those kinds of projects could be encouraged.
Well, why don't we approach these organizations that have the experience? And if they come up and say, well, this is one of the problems, then the select board can address it. Why make all the changes before you talk to these organizations that have been in existence for years?
Right.
That's what I don't understand.
The one on Spear Street did get a grant.
Is that the only one that got a grant in Charlotte?
No, the one up by the store did, yeah.
They got one.
A lot of money for the.
You got like $45,000 out of this, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's because the Affordable Housing Committee wanted to use the fund. So let's do it, and.
Mike, yeah, you had your hand up.
How much money was used on those 2 projects?
Well, that's a good question. Dean?
Dean, how much money
I thought Mike Russell was.
Mike Russell, you're up for, your hand was up. You're responding to the.
Yeah, I'll pass. Let's hear from Robert.
Okay, what's your question, Robert?
How much money for those 2 projects came from the fund?
This fund?
Yes.
Which 2 projects?
Jezevich and Counter.
0.
Probably, well, no.
Which was $10,000.
10,000 dwelling, and there might have been some planning funds. So 5 units up there
What do the
for.
priorities list have to do with them not get? How come they got one if they weren't on if the priority list said they shouldn't get one?
That was the only application that year, and the select board approved it. It was a select board decision. And there were 5 units up there, so 50,000, and 4 units over there, so 40,000.
4 units where?
At Twin
There's
Shacks.
6 houses there, only 4
I think it was 4 that were
affordable?
applied for.
No, there's 5 in the little
So we
cul-de-sac.
give each one of these habitat houses $10,000?
Yes.
The ones
Or
up
more.
on Spear Street.
But not the one by the Atlanta.
The old Lantern
No, we
was a
just gave
straight
them the
habitat
land.
project. The town gave the land. The town gave the land, but not a grant.
Well, there's
What I would do
there's a
if I
difference.
was me, I would say thank you very much, and we like a lot of it or don't like, whatever, but now we sit as a group and talk it out a little bit more, answer questions that we have, that Fritz has. I don't think we're there yet to say, I approve, let's go forward. I think we now have an opportunity to work as a group that the people elected us to do in the best interest of Charlotte. We take this, this, and this, and this.
So carry on.
And we have our hour meeting from time to time, once a month, every few weeks, whatever. We meet an hour before and we understand it, how it's going to look in the future.
So Carrie, we've been meeting since, and I don't know, the first day will take 2 months.
I know how long we've been waiting. I've read this.
And
I know it. I get it. I'm not there for them.
Okay, I understand, but the experts that can provide guidance are sitting in this room right now.
No, that's not true. They came to us to ask us to do the work, and I really appreciate that.
Give me a
But if we had put out asking people if they wanted to be on the committee, we may have gotten other folks too. A diverse, I'm not saying diverse, but who knows? We don't know that. We could have had more on a committee. And I really do appreciate what you did. And I will always appreciate what you did. But this is now our document, and this is something that we should go forward on for a month or two. We come back, we ask you, what do you think? We work together.
I'm not
We work
suggesting
together.
we vote on it tonight, but I'm not sure, I don't understand where we go from here. We're just going to all regroup in a month and sit here and...
From my perspective, I'd like to contact the Chittenden County and ask them to help us. They're always asking us, do you need any help with projects? Help us figure out how much we got. How do we inventory it? I mean, there's got to be people that know this stuff, know how to glean the information out of tax records and on maps and other things to find affordable housing. Personally, that goes a long way to helping me go forward, to know what we have. I mean, we just talked about, what, 12 or 14 new ones we built in the last few years? What is that as a percentage of new permits? I mean, do we have 20 building permits, 40 building permits? I mean, somebody can accumulate that information from records we've had in the same years that we built 15 habitat houses, we built 30 regular house, 30 non-affordable houses. Well, then, okay, now we're at a 50% construction rate there. I can't wrap my head around where we're going with this, and I think the information's available, and I think it would help make decisions. We just have to get that accumulated in some sort of report, and I would bet there's somebody at the county that's in charge of affordable housing.
I just have a question about affordable housing. Is there a calculation as to what the house sells for, what it's valued at? How do you identify an affordable house?
Mike gave us in a previous meeting that it has to do with it.
It's income sensitive.
It's the incomes, Chittenden County income, the number of people in the house, the percentage of money they have to spend on rent and or mortgage.
There must be some, like say 300,000 or 400,000.
It has to be, when I can look at it, it has to be relative to the number of bedrooms. Because if you're raising a family and you're only supposed to be considered affordable, maybe only 20% of your income goes to your mortgage or your rent, if you got a family of 5, it's different than if you got a family of 1.
Right.
So
Well, I'm just wondering if we can, being a lister, if we can do an analysis of what the values of homes are in Charlotte and find out, how many are 300,000 less,
you can do
that kind
some,
of
and
thing.
actually the lister already gave me that. I gave the list to Mike, and who didn't give it back to me. But it said there was like, I picked a number that was 230,000 people, or $230,000, and there was like 27 homes that were less than that.
Less than 200.
And how many homes had the other thing that I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, that when someone does there's, I think, 7 houses that were covenant houses, meaning they were by the state, you get tax breaks, not just, see, this affordable housing doesn't give anybody, our policy doesn't give anybody a tax break. I mean, you can get $10,000 to fix up your bathroom, but you still got to pay full tax on it. If you go a step further to stay affordable, you make a covenant with the state, and then you only pay 60% of your tax. So, I mean, that would probably be another incentive, is to inform the people, not only is there money there, but, this is how you go to get a state covenant. Then the rest of the town knows that I'm providing money for affordable housing. I think the calculation I did was like 17 grand or something.
Well, there is a tax.
We spend so far every year to subsidize affordable housing by lower taxes. So if we build up, if these more projects, we're going to spend more tax money every year to keep subsidizing it, so to speak. So I think that all needs to be presented before I can say, well, this is a great idea, but I need to know how much it costs, how much it's going to cost the town every year. If it's a covenant thing, then it answers Frank's question, because then it's in perpetuity. You're not allowed to take it back out.
And somebody could apply for this right now, and we could advertise right now so we can keep momentum of as well as work on if there is a better way to make it more attractive. It's a combination of everything.
If I could just use the Social Security Fund as an example. There was a surplus there years ago. And in other words, if you have a pot of money sitting there, people are going to find a way to get at it. Okay? And if you have this allocated and you have a policy, whether it's this one or the old one, people are going to, and look at what's happened with the old policy. People see it as being a valid source of revenue for a project, and they work at getting it. Don't look at Social Security disability, for crying out loud. I mean, I could go on for that. It strips down the fund, it legitimizes the concept, and next thing you know, you're in a position of saying no to something that people presume they have a right to, right? Because it's just been going on and on and on. Well, now you're stopping it, now you're the bad guy. I mean, my suggestion is slow it down, put it on life support, do whatever until you figure out what you're doing, instead of just having it sort of tumbling forward, because it just gets more and more awkward to get it right. That's all. You just get it right once.
Well, I think you could do a lot better job for a lot of the people in town that don't realize there's even a fund here now at this time, that maybe some advertising or some discussion or punch forum or somehow discussion on there is money here available to do these things for a small amount of money for a project. But just to hand it over to the not-for-profit, I'm totally against that. I'm absolutely appalled that anybody would even think of being able to pay it back in 5 years with no interest or even pay it back. There'll never be, as Frank says, there'll never be any affordable housing, because when you get a loan like that, heck, that's an easy one to figure out.
I think the problem is, one of the problems that people don't use is like, okay, I can get affordable housing, I get $10,000, that'll let me remodel a bathroom. And now for the rest of the time, I got to keep this as affordable housing. That doesn't make any sense. Who's going to sign up for that program? That's one of the main problems that they're trying to get rid of. I mean, I looked at that. I mean, I wouldn't do that, even if I was looking at it.
At least you're getting $10,000. It's better than not getting any money.
I'm not opposed to the increase of the amounts that are granted.
Yeah.
That's, I'm not opposed to, because that's something that should be adjusted for today. But I'm still trying to get over, I mean, there are a lot of things in the original that.
Maybe financial penalties. You put financial penalty. You can get it out. You don't have to stay here forever.
There are in the original. I mean, in the original, if you, there's a 25%, a 20%, 15%, depending on the number of years. And nothing, just pay it back after 25 years. But again, it's, you can pay it back, and you pay a penalty, so it's like a loan. I mean, you pay 15% or 20%, it's not a very good loan, but I mean, it is a loan. But for somebody that's doing a rental, they would make enough off that rental, even being affordable, to decide to get this grant.
Well, maybe we should, if we talk to the people at the county, we can get information on how the state makes it a covenant and tie this into that deal, so then when someone gets one of these, they get money to help build it, but then they also get a tax break because it's a covenant, and then it stays permanently affordable housing.
Right.
I'm not sure how that program works with the state.
What, the tax rebate fund?
Not the prebate. It's a affordable housing covenant that I don't know the rules for. I don't know if you know them or.
I don't know the rules either, but it sounds like it might be helpful for the select board to get somebody from CCRPC to talk to you about this, somebody who can answer a lot of your questions. You understand that. That seems like a good next step.
If it became, if this worked in with a covenant system, then okay, it's always going to be affordable housing. Maybe we need to give them more money, and then maybe you don't need to give them more money because they're getting a tax break. Things that, yeah.
So I will say, from experience I've had, when people ask about it or they find out about it, and I say $10,000 grant, the discussion ends pretty quickly.
10,000?
After they learn about the size of the grant, the discussion ends and they're not interested.
So, well, that's one thing. Frank said, well, let's make the numbers bigger. Okay, it's a $10,000 grant, or maybe it's a $20,000 grant, and now you get a 60% tax bill. That's money every year that you're not paying. If you're not paying as much taxes, you do the math, well, I can charge less rent and still be a good landlord because I'm not paying so much taxes and keeping it affordable. I think that covenant thing is going to tie, it's probably why the state does it that way, because it makes sense. It keeps it affordable housing, and it helps keep the taxes low so the rent can stay low. If you got to pay regular taxes, but you're trying to keep your rent affordable, that's not a good formula to work.
Okay, any other comments? I guess what we're saying is we're going to see what Chin County Regional Planning can do to help us. Some background, maybe the listers can help us a little bit, see where we stand now. So I guess we're taking no action for the time on what you've done. Thank you, folks.
Thanks for giving us a chance to
Thank
get
you.
your head around it.
Our indenture just expired.
Glad you finally got some folks here who are interested and had something to say besides us. It must have been a refreshing.
I do appreciate it.
Okay.
Is that what it was called? Yeah. Sometimes my instincts are good.
We just have a couple of things to clean up here. VLCT has their annual meeting. It's going to be in Doubletree, South Burlington. Would someone on the select board like to go, like to be the delegate?
Let's send Matt, he's not here.
Is this the one that we, was it just the select board members, or was it a committee member? Or is that something
Usually
else?
it's a select board member. Others can show up and talk, but only one can vote.
Well, I think there's a leadership discussion that you're referring to
Yes,
at Castleton. That's different.
Okay.
So this is October 3rd and 4th. I've gone up past several years. I'm willing to go, but I don't want to take away if someone else wants to go.
Not me.
It's close this year, it's not that, it's 15 minutes away.
Yep, no, I'm fine.
You want me to go?
Yep.
I'll be the delegate. You want a motion, or we?
Motion to approve.
Wayne as delegate.
As our VLCT delegate, voting delegate for the annual meeting.
Is that seconded?
Yep.
Favor? Aye.
The one thing I would say is the form indicates, the chair signs the form as to who is authorized, so I wonder if you want to have somebody else sign the form, just,
Is it in the book here? I don't think anybody cares.
Let's put it this way, we got one person that's willing to go. Who cares what the paper says?
Okay, now the next one was the leadership summit that you talked about, Carrie. I don't have my paperwork in front of me, but it's in Castleton. They're looking for a community leader to like to talk about, I think it's rural communities in the state. Anybody come up with interest in going?
I don't, but I was wondering if Abby Falk was, Dean. That's who I would. Is that certainly a leader in the community? Is that something, how are we gonna do that? How are we gonna figure that out?
We could advertise.
We got to pick somebody by August 31st.
This is it here?
Oh, that's quick.
Oh, here it is. So the Council of Rural Development invites Selectboard of the town of Charlotte to designate a local leader to participate, making it happen, local leadership, future of Vermont communities, October 1st at Castleton.
Or Christina?
Or Stuart.
Or Stuart?
What? You could
Yeah, that would be good.
Be our designee for the leadership of the future Vermont communities in Castleton.
The Charlotte representative.
We've got a great creamy stand down there, but that's the only attraction as far as I can see.
Wait, when is it?
October 1st.
Castleton University, October 1st.
I'm not here. And I don't want to be here. I'll let Robert do that. I don't want to go over. We should actually think we should send
Do you want to, hey, Dean, what happens, you've got email for the boards. Why don't you put an email out, see if you get any feedback?
He wanted to do that, and I said, well, let's figure it out.
sure.
Is that all right?
There's not a lot of time left.
I gave my nominee. Mine's Abby.
Abby, I can ask her.
Yeah, that's fine. She wants to go.
So if she does want to go, do you accept that? Because I think the deadline is
August 31st.
Yeah.
It's this week.
Friday.
If a day or two later, it'll probably be fine, but I don't think the select board's going to meet, until the 10th.
So let's say there are 2 or 3 candidates that say, I want to do it. Do you want to empower one of us to meet with Dean and select somebody? I mean, if you want to do it. Because we're not having another meeting, I don't think it's worth having another meeting to.
Have we done this in the years past?
It's a new thing.
This is new, yeah. Yeah, it's a one-day leadership
You want to go?
program.
October 1st. I agree. Well, I just said Christina. I agree. I agree for Mary completely. See, it can be done without emailing.
Yeah, I want you to make that motion? You can ask, do you want to ask first, Mary, or maybe ask Mary or Abby? Who do you want to ask?
Ask them if they both want to go flip a coin.
Yeah.
Ask Mary first.
Sure.
When is it?
October 1st. At Castleton.
We'll pay her way.
Maybe
You get a-
Dean and Mary could go together.
Free ride.
And lunch.
Okay, how do we want to leave this? Do you want to leave it up
We'll
to?
leave it up to the, I'll make a motion to let the select board chair work with the dean to pick a person and go to the Make It Happen Leadership for the Future of Vermont Communities, October 1st at Castleton University.
Okay, is that motion seconded?
Yes,
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
it's a Monday.
Oh, we have 2 sets of minutes. We didn't have enough people here to vote because someone hadn't attended. Let's see. Oh, because Frank wasn't here, and then you were one of, or Carrie wasn't here, and then you were one of the 3.
Which one are we doing first?
July 3rd. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 30th as may be amended?
So moved.
Okay. Seconded?
Second.
Okay. So the person who can't vote would be Carrie because she didn't attend that meeting. That's what happened last time. So now we have a majority still here. This is when we set the tax rate. I think it was a short meeting.
And then we talked about the wastewater for a little while.
Right, the wastewater folks came in.
We gave Christina the cleaning contract a raise and renewed it.
Right.
Right. Okay, I'm good.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, is the,
I just noticed
there,
the adjournment time is, do you know approximately what time?
oh, I think it was, well, that's right, 5 o'clock.
It was done by 5:30 because there was a
Oh, wastewater, that's right.
wastewater meeting after that.
Okay.
So one adjustment is it was adjourned at 5:30.
Call it, yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of August 13th?
So moved.
Okay. Fritz wasn't here. So
No, I can't move.
we need,
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 13th.
you were here, Carrie.
Second.
Okay. So you seconded it? Okay. Oh, the highway permit.
Just read and make sure you guys didn't mess anything up on that.
Oh, we had a, that's right, we had about an hour on the affordable housing.
One thing I know that I said, I asked Mike Russell, where did he see affordable housing in the West Village? And he said the Mason property and the LaBeouf property, and I didn't see that in here. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but I just didn't see it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, that was something that jumped out at me as, so you don't even have to put it in, I can just tell Fritz that it was, that's what was said. I like visuals.
I can see a 15-story affordable housing.
To go with my 6-story silo for the library, perfect.
There you go.
It's great.
Penthouse.
So you make the decision, Carrie, would you like it in or you're good enough just talking about it now?
I'd like it in.
Okay,
I
so
guess.
put it in.
Well, somewhere, and I see other parts and pieces of that there is discussion about different things. And so the question was asked, you know, like I think I stated, I see it, I know where it could go over in East Charlotte, and I like visuals, where do you see it in West Charlotte was my question. Replied, the property behind me, which is the Mason property, and the LaBeouf property. Just because I like visuals.
You know what I think I would do? Make it around line 90, because that was sort of the end of the discussion, then we wrapped it up. Want to do it that way? Remember Clark spoke up and we were wrapping it up?
Well, I think it was farther, I think it was,
Earlier.
I think it was earlier, but that's
Okay,
fine.
pick a
I don't
line.
care. No, I don't care. I really don't care about that part.
Put it on line 65. Line 65? Okay. Any other changes? All in favor, say aye. Aye. You can't vote, Fritz. Okay,
Fine, I'm going home.
we have warrants here.
Wow, look at,
Did we want to talk about the executive session thing, maybe?
Yeah, we can. I mean, at least bring them up to speed.
and especially because
It's not here
Mr.
anyway.
Krasnow's
so-
not here.
So I guess we could adjourn to executive session to talk about a pending lawsuit. Or not adjourn, but
No, you just recess the regular.
recess the regular meeting.
Executive session to discuss community
Yes,
legal matters.
let's do that.
And we'll let you know the time we come out, and I don't think there'll be any decisions.
I don't think we'll be making a decision tonight.
Okay. So I think VCAM could probably end as well, right? There'll be no discussion other than just saying coming out of executive session.
Yep,
Who seconded the motion?
I seconded the motion.
Okay?
And we vote for
Oh, all in favor, say aye. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go in the other room?
Yep.
Sure.